Imagine sitting down at a poker table, convinced you can read the room, only to lose every chip within an hour. Or picture confidently stepping up to fix a leaking pipe, completely certain of your plumbing prowess, right before flooding the entire kitchen. We have all experienced moments where our absolute certainty collided disastrously with reality. This is not merely a matter of simple arrogance or a temporary lapse in judgment. It is a fundamental glitch in human perception, a universal blind spot where our profound lack of knowledge actively prevents us from realizing just how little we actually know. In 1995, a man named MacArthur Wheeler walked into two Pittsburgh banks and robbed them in broad daylight without wearing a mask. When police arrested him hours later, he was genuinely baffled, famously muttering that he had worn the juice. He erroneously believed that rubbing lemon juice on his face would make him invisible to security cameras, applying the logic of invisible ink to human biology. This bizarre criminal case caught the attention of social psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger at Cornell University. They wondered how someone could be so entirely, spectacularly wrong, yet so thoroughly confident in their flawless plan. Their subsequent research birthed a concept that fundamentally altered our understanding of self-assessment. The Dunning-Kruger Effect is a cognitive bias where people with low ability at a specific task significantly overestimate their competence. The researchers discovered a cruel irony embedded within human intellect. The very skills required to become proficient in a subject are the exact same skills needed to recognize one's own incompetence. If you are terrible at grammar, you lack the grammatical knowledge required to realize your sentences are a mess. The deficit in skill creates a dual burden, leaving the individual both wildly inept and blissfully unaware. This dual burden is rooted in a failure of metacognition. Metacognition is simply the ability to think about your own thinking, to accurately evaluate your own cognitive processes and skill levels. Dunning and Kruger found that individuals scoring in the bottom quartile on tests of logic, humor, and grammar consistently rated their own performance as being above average. They were not lying to themselves or deliberately inflating their egos to impress the researchers. Their lack of metacognitive ability meant they genuinely perceived themselves as experts. The internal gauge we use to measure our own capacity is intrinsically broken when we first encounter a new domain. We see this overconfidence bias play out constantly in our daily social interactions and professional environments. Think of the entry-level employee who confidently interrupts the seasoned executive during a complex strategy meeting, proposing a simplistic solution to a deeply nuanced problem, or consider the fact that a vast majority of drivers consistently rate their own driving skills as above average, a statistical impossibility that crowds our highways with unjustified bravado. When we step into a new arena, our initial burst of superficial knowledge acts like an intoxicating serum. We learn a few basic terms and immediately feel a rush of unearned mastery. It is a common misconception that this phenomenon only afflicts the unintelligent or the chronically arrogant. The truth is far more humbling, as this cognitive trap captures every single one of us the moment we step outside our specific areas of expertise. A brilliant software engineer might confidently dispense terrible financial advice, completely blind to their own economic ignorance. A world-class surgeon might assume they can easily rewire their home's electrical system, ending in disaster. The Dunning-Kruger illusion does not care about your general intelligence. It simply waits for you to wander into unfamiliar territory without the necessary humility. When scaled up to a societal level, this collective overestimation shapes public discourse and cultural divides. We live in an era where access to a search engine provides the illusion of comprehensive knowledge, allowing anyone to feel like an epidemiologist, a geopolitical strategist, or a constitutional scholar after a few hours of reading. This rapid consumption of surface-level information accelerates the effect, flooding social media platforms with absolute certainty, masking profound ignorance. The result is a fractured dialogue where experts are routinely dismissed by amateurs who cannot perceive the vast depths of what they do not yet understand. Yet, the research by Dunning-Kruger also revealed a fascinating counter-narrative hiding at the other end of the competence spectrum. As people actually gain genuine expertise in a subject, their self-confidence paradoxically drops. They begin to recognize the sprawling complexity of the field, the myriad exceptions to the rules, and the vast oceans of information they have yet to master. This creates a fascinating inversion where the true experts often underestimate their relative competence. They falsely assume that because a task is easy for them, it must be equally easy for everyone else in the room. This journey from unjustified certainty to informed hesitation maps out a predictable emotional landscape. When we first tackle a new skill, we quickly scale what psychologists playfully call Mount Stupid, reaching a peak of absolute confidence with almost zero actual competence. But as we continue learning, we inevitably tumble down into the valley of despair. Here, the protective veil lifts. We finally acquire enough metacognitive awareness to see our own glaring flaws. This plunge in self-esteem is actually a vital signal of intellectual growth. Feeling suddenly incompetent is often the very first proof that you are finally paying attention. Why would our brains evolve to operate this way, setting us up for such embarrassing cognitive stumbles? Evolutionary psychologists suggest that this inherent overconfidence may have provided a crucial survival advantage for early humans. In a harsh, unpredictable ancestral environment, absolute hesitation could be fatal. A slight overestimation of our physical strength or problem-solving ability might have been exactly the catalyst needed to attempt a dangerous hunt, cross a treacherous river, or defend a territory. The evolutionary calculus favored bold action over paralyzing self-doubt, hardwiring an optimistic bias into our neurological framework to keep us moving forward. The echoes of that ingrained bias followed humanity out of the wilderness and into the modern boardroom. While charging forward with unearned confidence might have helped our ancestors survive a physical threat, it is remarkably less helpful when trying to manage a complex investment portfolio or navigate a delicate interpersonal conflict. The ancient survival mechanism now acts as a modern liability. We are operating 21st century societal machinery using prehistoric cognitive software that actively hides our operational deficits. Recognizing this mismatch is the first crucial step toward disarming the mechanism. Understanding this dynamic fundamentally changes how we view our own internal monologue and our reactions to criticism. When someone challenges our deeply held beliefs or critiques our performance, our initial defensive posture is often just the metacognitive blind spot trying to protect itself. We feel attacked because our brain is functioning exactly as it was designed, shielding our ego from the painful friction of our own limitations. But once we recognize the signature of this illusion, we can pause. We can choose to view that sudden spike of defensive certainty not as a shield, but as a warning light. This quiet insight into human nature fosters a profound empathy for others as well. When we encounter someone speaking with absolute impenetrable authority on a subject they clearly do not understand, our instinct is often anger or mockery. However, viewing them through the lens of this cognitive phenomenon shifts our reaction from frustration to understanding. They are not necessarily trying to be arrogant, they are simply trapped inside their own perceptual limitations, unable to see the boundaries of their own ignorance. We realize that we have occupied that exact same space countless times in our own lives. This brings us to a compelling psychological crossroads. If our baseline perception of our own abilities is inherently flawed, how do we ever accurately measure our growth? The solution lies in a deliberate, often uncomfortable practice of seeking external friction. True competence requires us to actively hunt for data that proves us wrong. It demands that we invite mentors, peers, and objective metrics to ruthlessly audit our skills. We must learn to crave the discomfort of being corrected, because that discomfort is the only reliable compass pointing us toward genuine mastery. The pursuit of knowledge, therefore, is not a journey toward ultimate certainty, but a gradual acceptance of complexity. As we climb the slow, arduous slope of enlightenment, our confidence is no longer built on the fragile foundation of not knowing any better. Instead, it is rebuilt on the solid ground of knowing exactly what we can do, and more importantly, precisely what we cannot. We begin to say the words, "I do not know," not as a shameful admission of defeat, but as an exciting invitation for further discovery. Ultimately, the paradox of confidence and competence reveals a beautiful truth about the human mind. The more we learn about the universe, our professions, and ourselves, the smaller we realize our individual perspective truly is. This is not a tragedy of diminished self-worth, but a profound liberation. Stripping away the heavy armor of unearned certainty allows us to move through the world with a lighter, more curious step. By embracing our inherent blind spots, we open ourselves to a lifetime of genuine learning, replacing the brittle illusion of mastery with the enduring strength of intellectual humility.